Today, we're playing 3 of the best decks to get you started in Legends of Runeterra. If you recently started playing the best card game on the market because you saw it in the League client, or you're returning to the game after not playing for a while, then this video is for you. I'm Snnuy, I've been playing this game for 4 years now, and I've hit Masters every single season, mostly with decks I've brewed up myself. Getting started can be a little overwhelming, so I'm bringing you 3 easy to build starter decks that'll get you winning in no time. And you can check the description for my full Runeterra beginner's guide and the deck codes. So here we are in the deck builder with the first deck we're going to showcase, Elder Dragons. This is the highest win rate deck in the game right now, and you should already have most of the cards available, like the 2 Shyvanas in this deck from the Fangs and Fury starter deck. So I'm going to go over every single card in this list, and then we'll jump into a game to showcase some of the gameplay and how to generally pilot this deck. The general playstyle of this deck is to play solid units in the early game so we can get to that late game where we start playing the more expensive dragons that will eventually take over and win the game for you. So starting at the top right here, we have the Dragon Allegiant, which is a 2 mana 2/3, very solid stat line, and it says when I'm summoned, draw a dragon if you behold a dragon. And beholding simply means you have it in play or in your hand. So this card just needs to see a dragon somewhere outside of your deck, and then it'll draw another dragon from your deck. Very solid stat line, and it helps you get to that consistent late game where you are playing your much more powerful dragons. The next card is Dragon Guard Lieutenant, another 2 mana 3/2 this time that says when I'm summoned, if you behold a dragon, grant me Challenger. So this is a little more complex. You're not just playing this as a unit, you want to actively take stuff out with that Challenger keyword. So this is a more survive the early game, take out some of your opponent's threats, or just don't allow them from playing anything because they have a 3 attack unit staring them down that will just kill their stuff if they aren't careful. It's all about applying pressure in the early game, making sure your opponent can't just do whatever the hell you want, whatever the hell they want, before you get to play your dragons. This card helps with that a lot. Very, very solid early game tool. Form Up is a 2 mana burst speed card that says give an ally +2/+2 this round. This one doesn't need a lot of explanation. We are a mid-range deck, which means we care about having better tempo than our opponent, having a solid arrangement of units that like to win combat and are very capable of winning combat. And sometimes when your opponent has a tool that might give them the upper hand, we simply say, nope, my unit gets +2/+2, and now suddenly I don't die to your removal, and I have 2 extra attack to take down your units. Next we have Single Combat, another 2 mana combat trick at fast speed. It says an ally and an enemy strike each other. Combat trick simply means you're activating a spell during combat to kind of swing the battle in your favor. What this does, it almost simulates another instance of combat. You pick an ally, and then it strikes another ally from your opponent. They both take damage, but because you're playing Demacia, which is a region that is very good at having pretty big units with good stats, this will usually mean you're using this card to win combat even harder. Very, very, very important tool in Demacia, and I'm actually going to skip the Blocking Badger Bear for now, because we have another card that does exactly the same thing for 1 more mana, but it says give an ally +0/+2 this round. So that means that for 1 extra mana, you are giving your units more health to then strike something from your opponent, which means that with that extra health, it's even more likely that you'll be able to win that combat instance. And then, skipping another card, we have Strafing Strike, which is the exact same thing. For 3 mana, an ally and an enemy strike each other. But this time, if the ally is a dragon, heal it 5. Extremely powerful, because you can imagine that in a mid-range deck like this, your units are going to be taking a lot of damage because you want to constantly put them into battle and make sure that they win that fight. Healing for 5 just lets you take more fights. So now, to go back to the Blocking Badger Bear, a card that we skipped. 3 mana, 4/4, it has a tag, Elite. This one is irrelevant. Most of the units in this deck will have the dragon tag because we are playing a dragon deck. But there is 2 interesting things about this card. The first thing is that it is 4 health and 4 attack for 3 mana, which is well above average. You're going to find that Demacia as a region has a lot of these type of cards that just push the amount of stats that a unit can have to their absolute limits. But not only that, it also has a keyword, Sharp Sight. Can block elusive units. Elusive units, if you played the tutorial, if you've played Runeterra a little bit, you'll know that these are units that can't be blocked normally, except by other elusive units. But now, because that playstyle has been a little bit oppressive and frustrating for a lot of the player base, we now have a new keyword specifically designed to block those pesky elusive units. A 3-mana 4/4, you just can't go wrong with it. It's extremely powerful stat line. Next we have the Scholarly Pioneer. This is a 3-mana 2/3. It can be played in 2 regions, which we'll ignore for now because this is just a Demacia deck. Challenger, and it says pick an Explore spell to create in hand. You can tell that this has lower stats than what you'd expect from a card in this deck. 3-mana 2/3 isn't great. The Challenger keyword though is pretty good, but the power comes from the Explore spell that it creates. This is a lot of flexibility. You pick one of these 4. You can either destroy your opponent's equipment, destroy your opponent's landmark, disable their positive keywords for 2 rounds, or heal an ally or your Nexus 2. So let's say your opponent's playing a deck, and this comes from experience, but they might be playing a Jax Ornn deck, which is known for their equipment. You want to destroy their equipment so they can't have their normal game plan. Or maybe your opponent plays a very powerful landmark. Well, you can just play this card, solid unit, and then for 2 mana, destroy their win condition. And if they don't have equipment or landmarks, maybe you want to just disable the keyword or heal your Nexus or an ally to be better in combat or to survive a little bit longer. Extremely flexible. You're gonna see these type of cards. There is one for every region, essentially. You're gonna see them everywhere. They are very powerful, and if you're worried about landmarks, this card will make sure you don't instantly lose to it. Next up, we have Shyvana as the first champion, which is a 4-mana dragon. There's the tag with Fury. And Fury is when I kill a unit, grant me +1/+1. So now you can kind of see why dragons have all these strike spells like the single combat, like the Gentleman's Duel, like the Strafing Strike, because they want to constantly strike units and kill stuff so they can grow in size. Shyvana says attack, give me +1/+1 this round. So only an attack, she becomes a 4/5, which makes it more likely for her to proc her Fury. And once dragon allies have dealt 16 plus damage, this can be while Shyvana is not even in the board. She doesn't need to see that damage happen. It just needs to be fulfilled when she is on the board or when she's dropped. And then suddenly she'll level to level 2. Attack, give me +2/+2 this round instead of +1/+1. And create a fleeting 2-cost Strafing Strike in hand. Strafing Strike is an ally and enemy strike each other. If it's and dragon, heal at 5. This is the card we're also main decking in our deck. You can imagine that having this effect on Shyvana, who is fighting a lot, and then also gets the ability to kill potentially another unit outside of the natural combat, and then also heal herself 5. She is going to be extremely sticky with extremely big stats because of that Fury, constantly killing things, constantly getting +1/+1 in stats. She is really, really hard to take down once she starts snowballing. And on turn 4, that is a very early point in the game to start that snowball. So your opponent's going to have hard removal most of the time, like a spell that just says kill something directly, because they aren't going to win fair combat against big dragons, especially with all those combat tricks we are running. So next we have another champion, Morgana. Now you might be confused, why is Morgana in this deck? She is 5 mana, she is not a dragon, and she has pretty low stats as a 3/4. So she doesn't even really contribute to combat that much. But I'll tell you right now, Morgana is one of the best champions in the entire game. She is dual region, so whenever you're playing a Targon deck, you can choose to play her. When you're playing a Demacia deck, you can choose to play her. And what she does, for 5 mana, she curses an enemy with Shackles twice. Shackles says, while I'm in hand, the curse unit is immobile. So whatever unit you pick with Morgana, your opponent needs to pay 4 mana, because she does it twice, to get that unit back into the game. Exceptionally powerful, because it's like disabling something, essentially. If your opponent has less than 4 mana, they cannot get their unit back for that turn. And to level her, you've targeted units 10 plus times. Doesn't matter if they are allies or enemies, you just need to target something. And as it turns out, cards like Strafing Strike target both your ally and the opponent's unit, which is +2 for Morgana. So she also levels very fast. And then on her level 2, she gets a new ability that is attack, curse the strongest enemy that isn't cursed with shackles, and deal 3 to the cursed enemies and 2 to the enemy nexus. It's a mouthful, but essentially what that means is when Morgana attacks, she disables one of your opponent's blockers, and she deals 3 to all enemies that are hit with these shackles, and 2 to the enemy nexus, which is just a nice bonus. On top of that, she has lifesteal. So even more ways to keep yourself alive. I know it sounds weird to have a card like this in the deck, but there are just so many synergy points, and she is already by herself an extremely strong card. That's why running Morgana. This is one of the champions you're going to have to craft, but you'll see that for almost every deck we play in this video, you'll need to craft at least 4 new champions, because there are only 2 that you unlock in the starter decks through the tutorial. So that's Shyvana for this deck. I would just recommend crafting Morgana as well as Elder Dragon, which we'll talk about later, because both of them go in a bunch of different decks. So it's not just like, hey, I only play them in this deck. No, you play them wherever you want, really. They are that flexible. Now, we're going to do something before we talk about the 6 mana cards that we have in this deck, and that is Elder Dragon. Elder Dragon is a little more complicated, but I don't want you to worry about that. What is important here, and what this says is you may put any followers that cost 6+ into your deck during deck building. When you play a unit with 6+ base cost, pick one of 2 dragon boons to play on it. So every time you play an ally that costs 6 originally, so even if you have a 6 cost unit that is discounted to 5 mana, it will still count as a 6+ base cost. Whenever you do that, you play a dragon boon on that unit. So for example, let's say I play any 6 cost unit and I get an option of 2 cards, 2 boons on the field. Let's say they are Infernal Might and Mountainous Vigor. I can pick one of these 2 cards. The first one says grant me +1/+0 and Fearsome. The second one says grant me +1/+0 and Tough. So every time I play a 6 cost card, you get an option between one of these cards. Challenger, Impact, Deathless, and heal allies and your Nexus 2. This is adding a lot of flexibility and complexity to a deck like this, but at the end of the day, it's fairly straightforward. You only get 2 options, and if your allies are low on health and your Nexus is low, you pick something that heals them too. If you want extra stats, give them one attack, a Fearsome, Tough, or Impact. This one is very aggressive, or you can grant an ally Challenger to take down some of your opponent's stuff. Deathless is an interesting keyword. This one is fairly new. The next time this unit dies, remove Deathless and revive it stunned with 1 health. So basically means when your unit dies, bring it back at 1 health. And that is actually extremely powerful. Deathless is one of the best keywords in the game. When you find this one, you're usually going to be very happy putting it on any of your units. For example, the Cloud Drake, which has a summon effect as a 6 mana 6/6 dragon with Fury. When I'm summoned, reduce the cost of all allied units in hand by 1. So this is what I mean with that base cost 6. Even if the Cloud Drake reduces the cost of a 6 cost unit to 5, it still gets that boon. On top of that Deathless keyword that I just explained, if the Cloud Drake dies and then gets brought back to life through Deathless, it activates the summon effect again, meaning your hand gets reduced by 1 another time. This is usually the card you want to play as soon as possible because it gives you that discount on your entire hand, which means you can play your other, more expensive ally even sooner. Super powerful as a 6 mana 6/6. You get a dragon boon from the Elder Dragon to play on this, to push it over the top, and the Cloud Drake is just the perfect time to start your game-winning takeover, because at mana 6 is when you unlock these boons, right? Because you need to get to the 6 mana units, and then you get this powerful effect that will just power your entire deck up to galactic stats. So next up, we'll talk about the Gentle Gem Dragon first, because this one is also very interesting. 6 mana, 6/5 with Fury, again, Dragon from Targon. Again, the regions don't matter, because as long as a unit costs 6 or more, you can put it in your Elder Dragon decks. When you play a fast spell, slow spell, or skill, grant other dragons +1/+1. What needs to be explained here is that skills are dragon boons. So anything that gets put on the stack in the middle will give your dragon allies +1/+1. If you have 3 dragon allies on the field and you play another one with a boon, your entire board gets +1/+1. Or rather, your dragons get +1/+1. If you are attacking with all your dragons, with the Gentle Gem Dragon as well, and you play a Strafing Strike, guess what? Your entire attacking board gets +1/+1, because this is a fast spell, and the Gentle Gem Dragon says, place fast spell off your allies. This is the engine. It looks complicated. It's really not. All this deck really comes down to is playing units on the field and then attacking with them and winning combat. All right, next we have the Horned Swarmcaller, which is a 6 mana 6/6 dragon again. Play, grant 2 enemies -1/-0, and disable their positive keyword. This is very solid stats for a dragon, but it comes with an upside where you can remove your opponent's positive keywords permanently, forever. So if you're dealing with a keyword like Overwhelm or Elusive that you can't deal with, the Stormcaller will just get rid of that forever. And then we have Dragon Guard Lookout, a 6-mana 5/5 that says when I'm summoned, if you behold a dragon, rally. And rally means you get to attack again. So this is kind of like the card that you use most of the time to win the game, because you attack with your dragons, you kill their board, and then you attack again with this card to push for lethal. And lastly, Judgment. This card also came in the Fangs and Fury deck. A battling ally strikes all battling enemies. That means that when combat is happening on the board, you can use this on one of your allies. You start swinging, and then the unit that you target this with, your ally, will hit everything from your opponent. This is kind of a last resort most of the time. When you're losing the game, you can play Judgment to actually instantly win the game. So those are the cards in the deck. It looks like there are a lot of effects on these cards, but it's super straightforward and simple. It's all about just putting your units on the field and winning combat with them. That is really all there is to it. And you're doing that by simulating combat and applying Dragon Boons to your big units. So what we're going to do now is we're going to jump into a game. I'll explain the play patterns a little bit more so you can see what it looks like in action. Okay, so here we are with game number 1. I'm gonna do my very best to explain all the cards we're playing and why we're playing them. And if our opponent plays a card that I don't quite explain well enough, in the bottom left of the corner, a little graphic will show up, which you can pause or look at to read the text of what their cards do. I don't usually play like this. I stream, I talk with my chat, I have funny interactions, but now I'm trying to be very informative to hopefully help some of you newer players get into Legends of Runeterra. So, again, if there's anything I can do better or anything you'd like to see for next time, do let me know in the comments. I will read all of them. I will respond to all of them. Like right now, I should have probably looked at this. This is Gerald Lightfeather, a 1-mana 1/1 with Spirit. And Spirit says this unit at +1/+1. This keyword can stack. Play granted ally enhanced Spirit. So essentially, our opponent played a 0/0 that got +1/+1 from Spirit, and then gave a card in their hand +1/+1 as well. That is what happened in that little exchange. So we're just going to play our 3/2. Then we'll play our 2/3. Now it looks like they're playing with a lot of keywords, so we'll use the Explorer's Blunder, which can disable enemy keywords. Funnily enough, fun little interaction. This is essentially a 0/0. So as soon as we use Explorer's Blunder on this card, it loses Spirit, and it just dies because it becomes a 0/0. So they played their champion, Lux. We're going to attack here. Looks like we're killing both, but our opponent has 2 mana, so it's very likely they have something to protect Lux. There it is. That's okay. We just want them to use their cards. Alright. So they have no mana for combat tricks, really, depending on what they play. We go for the Taric. Taric is a 4/6 right now. So what we can do here is simply kill the Lux, like that. And then next turn we can play our Shyvana. The sound of that. Getting rid of this Lux, getting rid of a champion is always pretty good. But there we go. All they have now is a Taric. A lonely Taric. Let's see if they choose to attack. They do. I will skip block here, because I like having this card on the board with Challenger. Alright, so we'll play our Shyvana. Get the snowball going, hopefully. We have 2 cards as backup here, so opponent passes, which is very interesting. I'm very happy passing here too. They're wasting 6 mana. We're not really wasting any mana at all. And we have our Gentle Gem Dragon to start snowballing with stats. So we'll play this. And what's funny right now, and this is interesting, because it says when you play a fast spell, slow spell, or skill, grant other dragon allies +1/+1. This is a skill that we're playing right now. The Dragon Boon is a skill. So what you'll see is that Shyvana instantly gets +1/+1. Our opponent should be very afraid. They played a 5-mana 1/1 that does something when it's empowered 5, which means 5 attack. Opponent can't even attack into it. Our snowball is going to be, frankly, ridiculous right here. We have another Gentle Gem Dragon to boost our stats even more. I'll tell you right now, they made a grave mistake letting us play our cards. every single card we play, we have 2 single combats that we could play right here. We'll also give our entire board stats again. So they gave Taric Barrier. Very interesting. And then they play Aphelios. Okay. So we're going to attack here, of course. We'll pull this here. We'll pull this here. And we'll let Taric do his thing. Seems good to me. Should work.
Fade and be gone.
If we kill 2 of their important units, we're honestly looking stellar. Very good. So what we're going to do as well is we're going to single combat here. And this is interesting because we have Fury. So we're attacking for 8 damage here. But if you check the eye, you'll see the dragon goes to 10 before the attack even goes off. Because this other dragon will proc off of the fast speed spell. And because we kill this, we have Fury. So we'll also level Shyvana. So they could play a spell here. I don't really know what they could play. And even if they do, we have another single combat. So this just looks like a pretty classic game where our stats are just bigger. Okay. So they decide to single combat our Shyvana. It doesn't really accomplish anything for them except denying the Fury proc. That's fine.
There are none like me.
Our Shyvana levels, which means that next time she attacks, our stats are gonna go even bigger. That's really what it's all about. Just very big stats. And the inevitability from the Elder Dragon. We have the Rally card, so when we summon the Dragon Guard Lookout, we're gonna ready our attack. We'll be able to attack again instantly with our big board. Likely just securing the game. So they have a stun for our 9/5. This is one of the cards that Aphelios generates. Aphelios has a million lines of text on him, which I would have shown in the corner. I haven't done that just yet, but when I'm editing, I'm sure I did. There's a lot of text. It's hard to get through. It's a very complicated card. And there we go. We tried to ready our attack, and the game was instantly over. So that is the Dragon deck. A lot of big stats. So to very quickly summarize again, what we tried to do was establish an early game through challengers, cards that can choose what blocks them. Just a 3 mana 4/4 is good, 2 mana cards, and then we have our champions at 4 mana, at 5 mana, and our 6 mana dragons to completely take over the games by just constantly buffing their stats and eventually having additional attacks in a single turn because we're taking out our opponent's blockers, we're forcing them to get rid of our big stuff, and if they can't, we'll just attack them multiple times to actually get that victory and their nexus to 0. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go to the next deck, and we'll do the exact same thing with the deck guide into gameplay to display some of the patterns and combos you can look for. So here we are with deck number 2, and this is a Poro list. We play dragons, which is... it doesn't really care that much about the dragon archetype. It's more about just being able to play mid-range with good units. But this deck is all about Poros. Just a lot of really small, fluffy creatures that grow big through Poro snacks, which says grant Poro allies everywhere. +1/+1, as well as the only champion in this deck as a 3 of the Poro King. Relatively budget to craft, but you will need those 3 Poro Kings to actually get the full list together. So let's go over the cards one by one. We have some control tools besides our Poros, and one of them is Thermogenic Beam, a 0 mana card that says to play, spend all your mana, deal that much damage to a unit. So if you have 2 mana, you spend that 2 mana, and then you deal 2 to a unit. Very, very flexible. You can play cards to reduce the cost if you don't need as much damage, but beware, as soon as you play this card, you will be set to 0 mana, because that is how much damage you will be dealing. Next we have a Poro, Affectionate Poro, a 1 mana 1/1, as all Poros are, with Challenger. What you'll see is that every single Poro has a different keyword or effect, and every region in the game has a 1 mana 1/1 Poro with a different keyword. So this is the Noxus one. We can play it in our deck because we have the Poro King, which lets us play all Poros. Pretty straightforward, just a good keyword. We have 3 of the Daring Poro, another 1 mana 1/1, Elusive. We have Lonely Poro from Freljord, which says something different. When I'm summoned, create another random 1-cost Poro in hand. So you play this 1 mana 1/1, and then you'll get another random Poro. It can be anything, as long as it's 1 mana. Then we have Forge Chief, which is not a Poro, but says 1 mana 2/1, strike, refill 1 spell mana. So you're paying 1 mana to play this unit, and if she gets 2 strikes, she will convert that unit mana into spell mana. Care a lot about spells in this deck, a surprising amount. We really want that spell mana. I'm actually gonna skip a few of the other cards here and go straight to the Poros next. So this is the bread and butter, the cookie and the dough for this deck, the Poro snacks. Grant Poro allies everywhere, +1/+1. You really need this card because you don't want to keep playing 1 mana 1/1s all game long. You want them to be big, beefy, and the Poro snacks do that as they give Poro allies everywhere. No matter if you generate them, if they come from your deck, all Poros in the game from your side will have an extra +1/+1. So you can imagine playing 1 and making a 1 mana 2/2 is already pretty good. But once you make them 1 mana 3/3s, 1 mana 4/4s, your stats start going really big. And since everything costs 1 mana, you're going to overwhelm your opponent with a fluffy army of Poros. The other card that we have to generate Poros is Poro Stories. This is a 2 mana card that simply says create 3 random 1-cost Poros in hand. So if you're out of fuel, if your hand looks empty, you play this card, and with a few Poro stacks, this could be 3 random 1-cost Poros that are simply 4/4s or 5/5s. So the champion of this deck is the Poro King, which just like Elder Dragon has a origin, which says you may put any non-champion cards with the word Poro on them into your deck during deck building. That's where we are able to play all these different Poros and buff their stats, hopefully, through the Poro King, which says, each round, the first time you summon another Poro, create a Poro Snacks in hand. And a Poro Snacks is this card. But as you can see from the cards on the right here, when the Poro King levels, each round, the first time you summon another Poro, create a random special Snacks in hand. And these give +1/+1 for 2 mana instead of 3, as well as an additional effect. This one gives 2 Poro Allies Challenger. This one frostbites an enemy. This one grants allied champions everywhere +1/+1 and a random keyword. And this one gives Poro allies everywhere. Oh, no, gives Poro allies impact this round. So aggressiveness, stabilization, as well as choosing how to do your combat through the special snacks. They are very powerful. And when the king levels up by playing 6+ other new Poros, you create 1 in hand immediately. So this deck is really all about playing those Poros and getting those snacks to buff the army. Some other cards we have is the Patch Porobot, which is a 2 mana 2/3 Poro. While in hand, I have a random keyword that changes each round. When I'm summoned, grant me this keyword. Straightforward, sits in your hand, and then as soon as you see that it has a good keyword, you summon it. Sometimes that can be something aggressive like elusive. Sometimes it is something that will make your life total or your combat prowess more durable, like tough or lifesteal. Situation will call for different scenarios there. And we have Poro Herder. 2 mana 2/3 as well. When I'm summoned, draw a Poro. If you behold a Poro, just like the Dragon Allegiant, I believe the name was, which says when I'm summoned, draw a dragon. If you behold a dragon, it's almost the same card. They're both just friendly guys that help your subtype archetype to succeed. The Prototype Porobot, a 2 mana Poro with elusive and Attune. Attune says when I'm summoned, refill 1 spell mana. So essentially this is a 1 mana card because you get 1 mana back, but not really. It's spell mana, so you can't play another unit from it. Last Breath, grant a random 6+ cost spell in your hand. When unplayed, summon a Prototype Porobot. That means that when this card dies, it attaches itself to a card in hand that costs 6 mana or more, as long as it's a spell. And we only run 1 of that, which is Formula. 6 mana card, draw 2, refill your spell mana. Very simple. It's more a bonus than anything else because a 2 mana 1/1 that attunes and has elusive is just very good with a couple of extra stats. And sometimes you get that nice little addition of summoning this card for free again, but you don't really play for it. It's just sometimes it happens, but it shouldn't stop you from playing this card when you need to. Time trick is predict, then draw 1. Predict says pick a card from among 3 in your deck, put that card on top and place the others in your deck. So you get 3 cards on the screen. You simply pick one of them that you want to draw, and you draw it. It's like a tutor in a way. You just look at 3 cards, and then you draw it. Howling Gale is another removal tool, which says deal 2 to a unit for 3 mana. Increase my damage by 1 for each other card you've played this round, up to 3 times. Poros are cheap. Poros are 1 mana, so you could imagine that this ramps up to the maximum very fast, which is 5. If you play 3 other cards, this will be a 3 mana deal 5 to a unit. We have the Ultra Soft Poro, which is a new card. 3 mana 3/3. Play, heal your Nexus 1 for each ally with a subtype. We're mostly playing this card because it's adorable, but also every ally with a subtype, that's all we're running. Everything is a Poro. So if you have a full board, this card will simply heal your Nexus 5. Aurora Borealis, 5 mana burst, create 2 random Poros and 2 Poro snacks in hand. When your hand looks empty, but you need some extra fuel, this card will literally add 4 cards to your hand, and that might seem expensive for 5 mana. Poro snacks are so important you really need this card, as well as the 1-mana Poros that you could play off of it. So it's basically a way to secure your game plan, which is getting those big Poros in one single card. 5 mana is expensive, but if it means you can have that consistency, it is more than worth it. And that is essentially the deck. So we're going to jump into the game. Just like in a Dragon deck, I'm going to explain what everything does as well as I can. And again, if you have any questions about this deck, feel free to post them in the comments. So here we are with game number 2. This time we're playing against Lux and Evelynn. Might play pretty similar to the Taric Lux deck. We'll see. So an important card here, as always, is the Poro Snacks. We have so many 1-cost Poros in our deck that we don't even need to keep them. The mulligan is always a very important part playing any game and any deck. And Poro King, Poro Snacks, and the Poro Stories are the most important ones. We got pretty lucky. We drew our 1-mana 2-1 to contest our opponent's 1-mana 2-2. They offer trade. We gladly take that because we get our mana back. And then we go to the next turn. We have a time trick. We simply pass here. Our mana goes back to spell mana, so we don't really have to worry about anything. Luminous Pride is a card that can snowball very fast. It says, give my supported ally all of my positive keywords and their stacks this round. So we can play the Ultra Soft Poro, even though we get no value from the summon effect, just so we can contest our opponent's plays. So what we can do is we can block here, play the Poro Snacks, it goes to a 4-4, and we kill one of their units. It's not amazing to play a card with no value, but in a card game, sometimes you are just looking to get positive trades, even if that means losing out on some of the other stuff you could be doing. That's life. You can't always get value from everything. So we will attack with everything here. They played this 2-2, which says when I'm summoned, curse your opponent with suppression. Simply get rid of that. It adds a 2-mana card to our hand. And once we get rid of it, we can play spells again. So the Lux is going to give +1/+1 to the 2-2, which can kill our Daring Poro here. That's okay. It's okay. We are snowballing. We are taking it one turn at a time. We'll play the Poro King. Our opponent isn't likely to have any real meaningful removal for a 5/5. So we can start the snowball and create those Poro Snacks to buff up our fluffy boys. There we go. We have Brash. Let's play this. Let's just play the 3-4. Because the Poro King is on the board, we get a Snacks. We can give all our Poros +1/+1.
I'm always ready.
And then slowly but surely, takeover is imminent. Yeah, we'll just play it right away. Why the hell not? There we go. It's
Why delay the inevitable?
it can be considered questionable attack with your Poro King, but we have another one, so that's okay.
Hi there.
They accept the trade. We do too. They are running out of cards, but since we're playing Poros and we have so much card generation, we are not going to run out of cards. We are fine right here. They lose their challenger, and there we go. This also adds 3 random 1-cost Poros to our hand.
Magic brings us together.
So we'll block you here. We'll take 3 from the Lux because he has barrier. And then we can see what our opponent does. They buff up the Evelynn twice. Okay. Now, a very interesting play we can make here is simply play the Aurora Borealis. And then we'll have exactly enough mana for the Poro Snacks to keep our Poro alive. It doesn't quite kill the Evelynn, but having a board is pretty good. Okay. They choose to use more of their cards to protect the Evelynn. We're fine with that, right? They used 3 cards to do that, and we still have a full hand. Next turn, the Poro King comes down. We'll have the Plunder Poro and the Poro Stories. There we go. Another one. It's a 7/7 now. Opponent plays an 8-drop. When I'm summoned, summon 5 Spritelings for each one there isn't space for. Grant the weakest ally 2 Spirit instead. They buff up the board. But we're playing Poros, so our board will eventually be bigger. Here we go.
This is my magic.
So we'll play the Plunder Poro. More stats from the King. They have more stats as well, okay.
Let's make tomorrow today.
Opponent has no cards in hand. Their board is slightly bigger, but we have 2 Poro Snacks. I will attack here because it is a 6-3. So whatever we play, even if we play 2 snacks, it still wouldn't be able to contest. We'll trade now.
That's it.
Evelyn does her thing, summons
Back on the
a
prowl.
Husk. And another Poro, sorry. So our hand is just going to be completely full. And this is a perfect display of the strength of Poros. It doesn't matter how many combat traits you lose. It doesn't matter how often your Poros die, how big your opponent looks. You are just creating more, and more of these little fluff balls. And then you buff them up as well. Here we go. The Poro King levels. We have 4 snacks. Our stats are just going to be bigger. Nothing else really matters. That's really the appeal of this deck. Infinite stats, infinite Poros. Keep creating more and more of those cards. So Lux will level here, meaning that when an ally gains spirit, it gains it again. We don't really mind. Pulling the King with Challenger. Lux levels, they get a pretty powerful Evelyn here. So we'll use our Poro snacks. We'll use it twice. Block here. We'll just take the tough to block the Evelyn to take less damage. We'll block here. We take 3 damage. We kill their entire board except the Lux, and we still have the King alive. Because the King leveled, it refreshes its effect to give us another Poro snack so we can play the Pouty Poro, which says Empower 3. Get keywords. But opponent knows the game is over. We're gonna keep playing 1-mana units and beat them down next turn. So that is the game. That is Poros. Very good. Okay, so to recap, what we did in that last game was take the early game very slow. We took positive trades where we could, even playing the 3-mana 3-3 with no additional value from the play effect. And then we just kept spamming the Poro snacks, knowing our opponent had no way of dealing with the Poro King. So we played the champion on board. We kept summoning small little creatures for 1 mana that gave us more snacks. We kept feeding them these snacks until they grew disproportionately large. It's almost like on League of Legends in ARAM, if you keep feeding Poro snacks to those Poros, eventually they explode, but not in this deck. They don't explode. The opponent's Nexus. That is the only thing that will be exploding. I would highly recommend this one if you're just starting out, as well as a Dragon deck, of course, but this one is a lot lower to the ground. It starts playing the game pretty early on. It starts looking for those snacks, but with the Dragon, it really comes online on turn 6. So let me know in the comments what you think about this one as well, and then we'll start with the guide for deck number 3. The final deck I have here is an Ashe and Vex deck, which will play in a way that debuffs opponent. It's all about giving negative stats by reducing the attack of the opponent. If you play for 7 days, you will get 2 copies of Ashe through the logging rewards. So this one might take a little bit longer to unlock than the others, but if you play for that full week, you will open your first weekly vault and you'll have 2 copies of Ashe. So the game plan, like I said, is reducing the attack power of your opponent's unit. When that happens, Ashe will get progress to her level up, and when Ashe is level 2, it says enemies with 0 power can block. Now, if you're flash freezing, frostbiting your opponents, which simply means setting their attack to 0, that means that you get to attack with your big board, and your opponent can't do anything about it. They cannot block you. And on top of that, we have Vex, which grants the strongest enemy Gloom on attack. And Gloom says this unit has -1/-1. This keyword can stack. So if you have 5 stacks of Gloom on your opponent's units, it means they have -5 attack and -5 health. If they get to 0 health though, they simply die. So applying Gloom to something with 1 health will instantly kill them. So the cards in this deck: Quietus. Kill a unit with total power and health of 4 or less, or destroy unit's equipment. So there's some flexibility, kill a unit or the equipment. But the interesting part, and the way it synergizes with this deck, is total power and health 4 or less. So if something is a 2/2, 2 health to attack, you can kill it. If something is a 1/3, 1 attack, 3 health, you can kill it. But if something has 2 attack and 3 health, you cannot kill it. So that's where Gloom and Frostbite comes in. You set their attack to 0, you reduce their health and attack with Gloom, and then suddenly Quietus can actually be activated, and it becomes a very powerful tool to stay in control, because this is a very slow, grindy, almost attrition-based deck that does care about units, but ultimately likes longer games because they can play their control-ish game plan that way. Ceaseless Sentry, we saw this in the previous game, 2 mana, 2/1, last breath, draw 1. A unit on the board to stop the opponent from just dealing damage to your Nexus, but when it dies, it draws a card. Glare, one of the most powerful cards in the entire game at the moment, can be played in Bandle City and Shadow Isles 2 mana slow, grant a unit Gloom to draw 1. So you give an enemy unit -1/-1, and on top of that, you draw a card. Card draw is extremely important, and this card has an effect on top of card draw. Next is the Iceville Archer, a 2 mana 3/1 that simply says play Frostbite an enemy. So you set the attack of an enemy to 0. A 2 mana 3/1 is a pretty good stat line, especially if you're setting the attack to 0, because attacking with 3 and only 1 health means it dies to almost everything, but not if that enemy unit has 0 attack, which we're very good at doing. Soul Harvest, comparable to Quietus from earlier, 2 mana slow, kill a follower with 3 or less power, or spend 3 mana to kill a champion with 3 or less power. Flexibility to either kill a champion or a follower, but they need to have 3 or less power. So it's not just total stats that need to be 4 or less. This is simply killing something with 3 or less power, which again, pretty easy through Frostbite or that Gloom effect. Then we have Legion of the Severed, a 3 mana 4/2 that says play grant Deathless to an ally in hand. This is the keyword that we saw multiple times in the previous games. Next time this unit dies, remove Deathless and revive it stunned with 1 health. This is a way to double up on summon effects, which we'll see a little bit later. Actually, I'll do that right now. For example, we have the Sealess Sentry. When it dies, it draws 1. It comes back from Deathless. It can die again to draw 1 again. It's the same thing with any summon effect. We have the Scholarly Pioneer, which we saw in the Dragon deck. That flexibility to create destruction for your opponent's equipment, landmarks, disable their positive keywords twice, and heal 2. Like I said, you'll see this card in many decks because of how powerful it is with that removal for the more niche cards in the game. And then we have Ashe, the first champion. 4 mana, attack Frostbite, the strongest enemy. 5/3. You've reduced the power of 5+ enemies to 0. When I level up, create a crystal arrow on top of your deck. And that crystal arrow, once he levels, you draw automatically the next turn. 2 mana slow, Frostbite an enemy and all other enemies with 3 or less health. And like you saw in her level 2, enemies with 0 power can't block. So this is a win con in itself. Ashe, Frostbiting the strongest enemy once he attacks is a way to almost guarantee that she'll be able to get an attack through, because you're attacking with 3 health, which is relatively low. If your opponent has 0 health though, or 0 attack on their unit, they can't effectively block Ashe. And even if they do, we have many more effects in our deck that either kills the unit that tries to contest us, or Frostbite them, like Harsh Winds. Let's say we're attacking with Ashe, we Frostbite their strongest unit, they have more units that they can block Ashe with, well, then we simply Frostbite them again, like this simple card, 5 mana burst, does it twice to 2 different allies. Also levels up Ashe very fast, of course. And then we have Existential Dread, 4 mana slow, grant enemies Gloom. As simple as it gets, really. A little board clear, if you will. It applies Gloom to everything your opponent has, gives them -1 attack, -1 health. This can turbo level Ashe, it doesn't actually turbo level Vex, which we'll see later. It's just a really solid control tool to stall the game and let you play your allies and units without them actually dying. Vex is a 4 mana Yordle, 2 regions as well. Fearsome, which means they can only be blocked by enemies with 3 or more power. Great little thing to have if you're reducing the attack of everything. Attack, grant the strongest enemy Gloom. So just like Ashe, she does something when she attacks, but whereas Ashe just Frostbite something, sets her attack to 0, Vex gives them -1/-1. To level her up, you've granted Gloom 5 different times, so it needs to be through different cards. It can't be through that Existential Dread card that gives it to everything. That is 1 instance of Gloom being applied to everything. But when she does, she gets the bonus text when an enemy gains Gloom, it gains it again. So that means that essentially Gloom becomes a -2/-2 instead. Vex is one of the most powerful champions in the game because as a 4 mana 5/4 and a keyword on top is exceptional stats, and she also does something on attack. Eradication, kill all units with 3 or less power. This is like the Soul Harvest card, except it does it to everything, including your cards. So be careful with this one, but it can be a very good card if your opponent is swarming the board, and then you can play 1 card to kill all their low power units. Then we have Shadow, 5 mana Fearsome, 2/5. When I'm summoned, draw Vex. This is what we call a boat in the game. Boats is the word we use for tutor in Runeterra. So you summon Shadow on the board, she draws Vex immediately, and then I have +1/+0 for each different time you've granted Gloom this game. So Shadow can also become a very large unit with Fearsome, so if you keep the attack of the enemy units low, Shadow will become such a big unit that can't be blocked because of Fearsome, that it will be another way to have a just really big bomb to hit the opponent's nexus with. Then we have Grim, 6 mana 5/3, Fearsome, play, grant a unit 4 Gloom. Straightforward, simple card. It's almost like a removal tool because giving something -4/-4 is usually enough to kill it, or just make it irrelevant for the rest of the game because they won't have any attack left. What's interesting is that if you have a level 2 Vex, this doesn't say grant a unit 4 Gloom, becoming 5, because Vex gives 1 extra. This is a grant a unit 8 Gloom with a leveled Vex on the board. Instant removal, as well as developing a good unit. Vengeance, 6 mana fast, kill a unit. Premier Shadow Isle card, this is what they're known for. Just click and kill. It's a bit expensive, so you have to be careful with it. Use it on your opponent's big threats, but when you need to remove something in a pinch, Vengeance has always got you covered. And lastly, we have the Harrowing, which is an epic card, but this is a way to secure the win if it looks like all your important units died. Because this says 10 mana, slow, revive the 6 strongest allies that died this game and grant them ephemeral. So for 1 turn, you get all your strongest allies back, which will usually be Ashe and Vex. They attack, they frostbite the enemy units, they apply Gloom. Your opponent usually won't even be able to block the board you're attacking with because of all those attack debuffs, but they are ephemeral, so when they strike, they die. This is a 1 turn, do something very powerful that will often win you the game, but you have to be careful with a temporary effect. So that is a deck. Again, if you have any questions, post them in the comments. We're going to take this one for a swim, and I will update with the play patterns as well as tech choices and little combos you can do. And here we go with the final deck of this video. As you can see, we're playing as another Lux deck. She is quite a popular champion. Surprise, surprise, just like in League of Legends. Last time I checked, she was the 2nd most played champion in the entire game, right behind Jinx. So no surprise there. Our opponent is going to play a lot of pretty cheap units. So keeping Existential Dread to give them -1/-1 is going to be quite powerful. I don't want the Celestial Ceaseless Sentry. We're mostly just looking for other early game cards that will apply Gloom or Eradication that will just kill their entire board. This is a game winner against Lux Vex because all their stuff is very low cost. So we are just going to pass. We're going to play like a true control deck. We're not going to do anything until our opponent requires us to do something.
I am Luxana, Lady of Light.
So this applies Gloom. So if this applies Gloom, our 2/3... Oh, I should actually pull up this card. Apologies. This is a story landmark. 2 mana, grant a unit Gloom for Act 1, grant an ally Impact for Act 2, and then boost a unit. And boosting means increasing the stacks of Spirit or Impact or Gloom. So we can just let this Lux attack. Maybe they'll pass back.
Crown Guard won't fail.
We'll play this. They'll probably apply the Gloom. But we can destroy this landmark so they don't get any more value from it. Yeah. I don't think it mattered when we played this. So here we go. We're just gonna destroy this right away. All good. No value for them. And then next turn we're going to play Vex. And again, Vex is one of the best champions in the entire game. We simply play her as a 4 mana 5/4.
Brood in peace.
And then she's gonna do some good stuff for us. Applying that Gloom on attack. Now we have the Eradication, which we would very much like to set up. So I'm not going to attack with this because it doesn't accomplish anything, but here we go. We attack, we apply that Gloom, and because Vex has Fearsome, she just gets the attack through. Our opponent gives everything Spirit, giving this +1/+1. It's fine. We have Eradication to potentially kill a large portion of their board. Let's see what they do. There is their own Vex, so we can do this to kill their board, as well as our own unit. That's fine. Let's see what they do here. It's now going to be Vex versus Vex. 2 of their cards gone, 1 of ours. That's okay. If Vex attacks here, we could block her. They apply Gloom to us. So that's a 4/3. -1/-1. Now Vex is going to attack, making us a 3/2. That's why Vex is very powerful, as you can see. But we can do the same thing here, so that's okay. We are simply going to... We could actually just go ahead and kill this Vex here. Grant 4 Gloom.
My favorite thing.
There we go. We're removing our opponent's units. We're applying pressure with our own units. They have Shadow there to draw their Vex.
It's cool to care.
Okay, so we'll attack with our 5/3. We could honestly attack with Vex too to apply Gloom, because we have another Vex in hand.
I hate it here.
I think this is fine. because we have Glare as well as another Vex to play. I think I'm okay with this. Let's see what happens.
You're welcome. I'm scared.
Let us see what they play. We have the Existential Dread as well, depending on what they choose to do here. So they'll want to play their own Vex. I think this is better. We'll do it like this. Killing the 4-1, and then we have Harsh Winds to frostbite 2 enemies if what they're doing gets a little too scary. Alright, we can pass here. There's really no reason to do anything at all. Alright. So they have, they don't quite have the ability to block Fearsomes. This doesn't seem worth it, though. Not quite. If we play Vex, she becomes pretty small. We could just do the double Existential Dread to kill their units here. It's levels Vex too. Okay, they get boosted. That's pretty good. Okay, we'll play the Vex. She gets -1/-1 twice from the grotesque gift. From their summon effect.
Hey.
Okay, she's now at 2-1. That's that is interesting. Why am I at 4 Gloom? Yeah, I thought I would be at only -2. Okay.
So stupid.
So their board is pretty big right now. It doesn't really matter. It's fine if our units die because we have the Harrowing. So we're gonna be quite happy if we can just block next turn, kill off our own stuff, and then play the Harrowing. They attack here. We're fine with that. Just see if they play anything in return. They don't.
Dude, not cool.
We can pass here. Pass back. Let's play the Harrowing. And there we go. Big board coming right up. And this is why the Harrowing is a very important card. It is unfortunately an epic. I don't think there is a way to get it easily through the starter decks. But you'll be able to see the power right here, because Vex now on attack grants 3 Gloom, because we have 2 of them. Normally she applies 1, gets doubled twice. So let's see here. So they choose to kill 1 Vex. It's alright.
Scared.
So here we go. This one gets Gloomed. This one gets -2, -2. So we'll pull this here. This will be forced to block. It might be better to just kill this off then, actually. Let's do it like that. Alright. So they're at 1 HP. Not quite lethal because of the answer that they had. But we have the Harsh Winds to stay alive, as well as a blocker we can develop. They go for the Vex here.
I'll make your midnight dreary.
We're playing the control plan quite well here.
Can't a Yordle just brood in
We'll pass.
peace?
And there's the
You could
Lux.
use some brightening up.
So there is not that much point in playing the Ceaseless Sentry here, because when Vex attacks, he applies 2 Gloom and it will die instantly. But it is card draw. And card draw is pretty good. So we'll play it right here. We continue just controlling the board of the opponent. They think they have a lethal attack here, but we have Harsh Winds. We have the quietest killing a unit with total power and health of 4 or less. We'll do that here. One interesting little combo as well with the Harrowing is that we resummoned 2 Vexes that died. But what's interesting is here that summons 2 more Vexes because we added 2 more to the graveyard. All right. Just gonna pass. It's fine.
You just want to hold me back.
This kills Lux.
Hearts incandescent.
And this is where the Ashe package comes in extremely clutch.
This luminescence.
The Lux
cannot
levels,
be
the Vex is leveled. They have 2 very powerful champions on the board. But we have 1 card to just counter their entire play. Here we go. 0 attack for both of them because of that Frostbite. Now, I haven't said this at any point during the video, but one important thing to note is that every single deck we played so far has above 55% win rate. So, if you choose to play these decks, for this patch at least, you'll have a lot of success with it. Here we go, 4 Vexes. Just a ridiculous board, really. Let's see what happens. Because the Gloom kind of just gets amplified by 4 different Vexes. This is a -6, -6, another -6, -6. That is a big lethal, a very flashy and swingy way to win. But it is beautiful, and this is what control decks to me are all about. Units should matter in control decks. That is how I like to play them. And if you do too, you can't really go wrong with this one. Alright, so to recap, what we did in that last game was, honestly, we gave our opponent a lot of breathing room. We let them play their units, we let them attack with them, and then when we really had no other choice, we used the Harsh Winds, we used the Eradication to kill some of their small stuff. And ultimately, what it came down to was just not taking any real meaningful damage by taking bad blocks, by removing inefficiently. Because at the end of the day, what we want is the harrowing. We just want to not die and then win by playing one single card. Now, it's important that through cards like Grim, Shadow, and Vex, and even Ashe, you can still apply a lot of pressure and force your opponent to use cards in an awkward way. But at the end of the day, all that matters to you is staying alive and getting to that late game to play the harrowing. Don't die, play your cards as efficiently as possible even if you don't get max value, and eventually close out the game through those big expensive cards. So that is all that I have for you guys today for this video. 3 starter decks to get you started on your Runeterra journey. If you want more information, if you want more feedback, if you want to ask me any questions, make sure to post them in the comments or join my Discord or go to my stream, twitch.tv/Snnuy, to ask me any questions live. I stream most days. I play either PvP or Path to Champions. Sometimes a little bit of variety, but 99% of it will just be Runeterra. So, again, I might update with more starter decks in the future when balance update happens or when new champions get added to the game. So let me know what you want to see from videos like this, and I'll try to improve on the concept. But for now, I'm gonna head out. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.